Hi, this is Little Dwarf playing games while rambling incoherently into a microphone. Why? Well, just because I can, and I continue with Chronicles of Myrtana, Archolos, blind. Now, I have realized something. The game seems to be kind of, reaching its end. And I have a bajillion of unread books in my inventory, so I think what I am going to do now is I am going to read all of the remaining books that I have not read until this moment, because I want to do it before the game ends. I will, as the last time, denote it in the description. I'm no longer I'm not sure how long it will take, so if you're not interested in it, you can see the timestamps and see if I proceed with something else in this episode, or is it another hour of just reading books in-game. So let me get to it. Okay, I read this, right? About the ages. Oh, no. Second volume, third volume. I haven't read this. The Age of Creation. In the first days of the world, before land rose from the bottom of the sea, all things were covered by the immeasurable light which bound the creation process. Eons have passed, and the undivided eternal light solitary ruled over all existence, and so eternal light gave way to eternal darkness. The foundations of the universe trembled, and the life-giving energy of creation reached its farthest corners and gave motion to celestial bodies, which began to swirl the source of eternal darkness called Morgard. Together with the energy from the black recess of the abyss, 4 elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, were released, but the eternal darkness, like eternal light, alone could not bring life into the world. So from the depths of Morgard came the sun, which warmed the dark and cold crust of the primordial world. Ages passed before the elements of water and earth breathed life into the dry valleys and rocky recesses, filling them with water, and rose mountains from which spurted life-giving rivers. The second volume. When in a primordial world, lands and waters found its place, the power of creation gave birth to plants and animals. As on the order of the fire element, still rising mountains trembled and spit flames which enriched dead soil. Then river basins became covered with grass, and the mountain valleys with forests. Depths and shores of the sea, plains and woods were filled with game of all sorts, and each of them found in its place on the ruthless but ironic wheel of life. A wolf would always dominate the sheep, and a bear was always stronger than a wolf. At the end of their lives, each of them would be nothing more than meatbags' food. But when life flourished on the east, on the west it withered. Yet the energy of creation brought wind into the world, which pushed clouds over the farthest wastes of the west, changing them into vibrant warm forest. Thus, the last of the elements of Morgard arrived. When plants and animals became one with the world, the energy of creation gave birth to a human. At last, the world came to the world came the gods, destined to rule over the whole world, the whole work of Morgard. Life and death, creation and destruction. Thus they reigned supreme over the world, and they taught humans nearly everything they knew. To the gates of their stone cities hailed old and young, healthy and sick, and the masters of the world blessed them with wisdom and mercy. But one day arrogance and vanity poisoned humans' hearts. They wished to learn the gods' ultimate mastery, knowledge of creating life. They opened the gates of Morgard, hoping to find answers to their questions, but behind the doors of the untold void they found night, and with it death stepped into the world. Since then, every human one day had to look in the eyes of the indifferent finality. Afraid of the destructive power of their own making, the gods decided to leave this world, never to return. They left humans a figment of their own power, meant to lead them through the darkness that was yet to come. Thus magic came into the world, and the Age of Wonders came to an end. Ages passed and humans, broken and abandoned, stepped off the path of righteousness and order and awakened in themselves the primal instincts of their ancestors. In endless wars, brothers and sisters turned against themselves, until the whole memory of the old teachings have been forgotten completely. Humans began to erect shrines in honor of the gods, looking for solace in the age of woe. They prayed to Enos, the god of light and order, and Beliar, the god of darkness and malice, since light and darkness, life and death, order and chaos would clash, poisoning mortal hearts. But some did not accept such a matter of things. Builders, as they were called, tried to find the source of true power of their masters. They knew that light and darkness have to coexist so that the process of creation can continue. And so they went to the wisest of the wise. So they sent the wisest of the wise to the four corners of the world to teach the people the dogmas of order, and the worthiest of them were taught magic, the greatest gift of the gods. Okay, like, I guess it's okay that the game provides some more cosmology, because actually the world of Gothic was always pretty sparse on details of what its people think about the beginning of the world. Like, I guess Vatras talked about it a little bit, how everything came out of the water in the beginning. But I don't have that much to say about it. I read all of this about the water mages. Right? Yeah. I think I read all of this. Nope. Don't count on me to. It's a foreigner's guide to Archolos. Don't count on me to describe you in detail how I ended up on Archolos. The story sounds as amazing as it is pathetic, and I happen to have a reputation to uphold. However, the gracious winds brought me from the far south to this exotic land northeast of the Sea of Myrtana. Were it not for a contract with a friendly merchant family, I would probably have nothing to look for here. In fact, I'm guessing the locals wouldn't even let me into their harbor tavern. Archolos is an old country with a rich history, of which the native inhabitants are often eagerly reminded. Strangers tend to be unwelcome here, especially the penniless and the newcomers from the southern islands. If you're a southerner, you have a problem. If you're a poor southerner, you have a double problem. Fate has never spared me gold in my life, so at least having no roof over my head and dying of hunger were not a threat. Taking advantage of my free time, I decided to write a few words about the island and its inhabitants. Who knows, maybe it will save you a few problems. The village of Silbach. No, wait, I need volume 2, the town. The first and most obvious point of my trip was the city. The truth was told by sailors about the size of this agglomeration. It is huge. Its countless streets, passageways, arcades and overpasses are sure to make you dizzy. Whether you've been here for a while or not, I advise you to buy the cartographer's Ludwig's city map, with key directional points marked on it. If you still get lost, ask any of the Araxos Merchant Guild runners for directions. They will lead you anywhere you want, of course if you toss them a few coins beforehand. Archolos is a city of many possibilities, but it is just as easy to get a blade under your ribcage if you are not careful. Once you've made your way through the throngs of workers and the poor in the harbor, stop by the Siren's Whale for a pint of ale. Helga, the tavern owner, may serve nasty beer, but she's also a treasure trove of gossip and information. The most important thing is to find a job. Even if it's carrying barrels of rotten fish, you have to work in this town. Otherwise, sooner or later you will end up on the street, and from there you will take a straight path to the poorhouse, and believe me, you don't want to end up there. The village of Silbach. Prepare yourself, dear reader, for the inhabitants of this village to be only slightly nicer than a herd of angry scavengers. They will stare you down, spit at your feet, and threaten you with their fists, especially Gabriel. Day and night he guards some shed like a rabid dog guards a piece of rotten meat. I had the impression that he didn't beat my face in just because he didn't want to listen to my lamentations, the lamentations of the stewards later on. This is weird for a guide to describe particular people contemporarily living in the village, because that's going to date it very quickly. Like, once Gabriel no longer works there, like, I think he's dead actually, or has run away. It's no longer, whoever reads this has no point of reference, so that's pretty weird for a guide. Albin, the village leader, is the voice of the people of Steelbach, so don't expect a warm welcome from him. Before he lets you speak, he will recite a whole litany of rights and duties. If you want to live in harmony with him, you'd better take his words to heart. He's a strict man, but he appreciates hard work in people. Impress him and you will earn his respect. I stayed at Bastion's Inn and even got warm food there. He's probably the most decent man I met in the village. He cares about his guests no matter who they are or where they come from, as long as they have something to pay for it. He helped me with a local drunkard, Rick. If he hadn't done that, I'm sure I would have been in chains. If you can survive in Silbach, I give you my word, you will survive anywhere on this island. Fishing settlements. After reaching Archolos, I asked the carrier to drop me off at the northeastern beach, called by the locals the Ambered Coast. At first, the guy was a bit annoyed, but a few extra coins settled the matter. Anything to avoid paying that horrendous duty. As soon as I stepped ashore, the fisherman working there gave me unfriendly glances, all except Duncan. The man handed me grog and offered me to take me stealthily into the harbor. I declined out of common sense, though he sounded like an honest man. I had a completely different impression when talking to people on the west coast. The settlement managed by Zachary, called Sailor's Retreat, is a real oasis of peace. The fishermen there, former sailors from the Myrtanian fleet, live from day to day, practicing simple but honest crafts. Zachary is a man of principle with great faith in the law. He also has big knowledge of history. If you have some time, sit by the campfire and listen to some stories. His friend Harold collects and sells various trinkets thrown ashore by the waves, and most of that is junk, but sometimes you can find a real beauty. It's more of a, to be honest, it's more of a memoir than it is a guide. Like, I feel like this works really bad as a guidebook, because as I said, it's going to become obsolete in a couple of years when all of those people that he mentioned are dead or have moved on or whatever. It's more of a collection of his memories. I think it's mistitled. Bermer's Farm. To the southwest of Sailor's Landing, you will find a farm owned by the landowner Bermer. Its inhabitants value hard work and are clearly proud of it. Unlike those in Silbach, they will welcome you with open arms, as long as your presence does not become a burden. Despite the fact that the farm is surrounded by woods from all sides, and there is only one road leading to it, the people seem unconcerned about bandits and wild animals. One of the workers, named Hod, claims that it is due to divine intervention and the fact that the locals live in harmony with nature. I find it hard to believe the words of a guy who never parts with a bottle of grog. Bermer is the complete opposite of his employees. He is a nervous and abrasive man, especially towards his son Kyle, whom he constantly rushes to work. On the other hand, I understand him. Managing a farm operation is a big responsibility. Despite his sharp tongue, Bermer commands respect from people. Apparently he also maintains good relations with the merchant guild Arhcolos, whose mercenaries often visit the farm. The vineyards. While on Archolos, it would be a sin not to visit its famous vineyards that produce arguably the best wine in the world. There are at least 2 grape farms on the island, one in the north near the town and one in the south near the village. Each is characterized by a different work policy and of course the taste of the wine produced. The northern vineyard, managed by a certain Valerio, produces strong and expressive wines that directly reach the tables of the richer part of the society. Although the owner has many years on his neck, he still vigorously fulfills his duties. In his work he is helped by his 2 sons, who, to put it lightly, are not in love with each other. I swear that when the old man dies, knives will be drawn between the brothers. The southern vineyard is run by a rival winemaking family, the Arhcolos family. They produced light and sweet wines, contrasting with the heavy aromatic drinks of the competitor from the north. It was their liquors that appealed to me the most. The woman says she doesn't make so much money from them and has to look for markets wherever she can. Her employees seem much nicer than the people in the north, and more importantly, they are also much more open to strangers. Wolf's Den. In the east of the island, just beyond the charcoal pile and the large lake, rises a mountain fortress called the Wolf's Den by the locals. It is said to be ruled by a burgrave who reclaimed it from the previous owner years ago. I tried to learn more about the history of the fortress, but the people I met nearby were silent and unwilling to talk. I had the impression that they were afraid of something. Although the fortress looked old at first sight, one could feel certain majesty emanating from it, a reminder of past glory. The way through the gate was blocked by a stout sentry, dressed in full armor from head to toe. He looked like a golem. He didn't take out the big axe on his back, but he firmly ordered me to move on, and I obeyed. Helmut, a builder who worked on the other side of the lake, told me that these warriors would sometimes visit his outpost to see if the charcoal burners were doing their jobs properly. For what purpose, he would not say. He was reluctant, just like the people of Wolf's Den. Or maybe he was just afraid of those boneheads. If I were you, reader, I would avoid this place by a wide margin. The monastery. Although the fire mages have worked hard over the centuries to bring the people of Archolos to the worship of the one true deity they believe in, their efforts have been unsuccessful. The best proof of that is the monastery of Adanos, located in the eastern part of the island. At the request of my contractor, I went to the tabernacle to personally see the transportation of the goods. However, I could not refrain from looking around. The monastery complex truly outshines the palace building in my homeland. I am sure that the work of architecture could not have been made by a mortal. The building rises on 2 islands, the larger one, which houses the shelter and wings for the water mages and novices, and the smaller one, intended for the members of the High Council. The mages live a modest life, despite the great power they surely possess. They spend most of their life praying and teaching the novices. Unlike their counterparts in the city, they do not beg for donation for the church, but they try to be self-sufficient by planting herbs and vegetables. By day the monastery is impressive, but the true beauty can be seen once the sun goes down. The eerie crystals along the pathways illuminate the shrouded sanctuary, glowing all shades of blue. Okay, as a guide, as I said, it works pretty poorly, I would say. It's more of a collection of memories. Okay, I'm pretty sure I read all of that in the past. Blessed Continent. I think I read all of this. Yep. Powers that be. Whether you are a simple merchant or a knowledgeable scientist, you have surely noticed that the world is governed by a predetermined order. Farmers in the field bend their necks in the scorching sun of the day, and weary travelers find their way home thanks to the moon's light at night. The abundant rain makes plants grow faster, and the ore exposed to fire can be shaped on the anvil at will over time. Countless treatises have been written trying to explain what this unknown force is that sets the world and all its elements in motion. Although many awe-inspiring speculations have been made on the subject, the theory closest to truth is that the influence comes from the heavens, where Enos has his seat. It is he who, like a skilled miller, turns the wheel of life day after day, pushing the disks of the sun and the moon over the sky, creating rain clouds and stoking fires in the hearts. While it would be heartening to simple hearts and minds to accept the position that Enos is a personified entity, scholars should treat him purely metaphorically as a kind of causal power that gives momentum to the world, and one that must be endlessly studied. Okay, so this is very interesting, because this is like this is basically borderline and almost like an atheistic position in a sense that the writer of this book doesn't believe that gods are actually personified. He doesn't believe that they are people, like doesn't believe that they are entities with their own minds. He thinks gods are basically like the laws are the cosmic force that governs the laws of nature, which is a weird position to take in this universe, because people have been shown to directly communicate with the gods. You can talk with Enos and Beliar in Gothic 3 personally, and also magic comes directly from the gods, and interacting with their shrines actually brings tangible benefits in an instant. If you pay Enos, he's going to heal you, and if you bleed yourself for Beliar, he's going to pay you. So, you know, that's kind of interesting. But let's read Volume 2. Understanding Enos not as a personified god, but as an idea of causality, order of nature and the perfection of action, people occupying the lowest position in the spherical division of the world should be considered adequately as the least perfect. Proof of this is the fact that we make mistakes. Enos, on the other hand, does not make mistakes at all, and if there is an exception to the rule, it is considered widely understood and judgment-free divine will. It should surprise no one, therefore, why the gates of heavens are sealed, tight against man. Are we therefore destined to remain lower, subject to the laws of higher, incomprehensible force? After all, we can in no way influence the sphere that is fundamentally inaccessible to us. However, we have been bestowed with reason, which, although does not allow us to reach the heavens, makes us able to bring their particle down to earth. An example of such a divine particle is wine production. The sun, which is at work with the causal power, warms the grapes through the summer, which can be harvested by the farmers in the fall. Then the man transforms the knowledge and kneads the grapes. Then he puts them through a process of fermentation, and after a few months pours the prepared beverage into bottles. Under a king's banner, I have read all of that. It's about the history of Archolos, the power of divine light. I have read that. Tangled Tongues, Volume 1, a book about linguistic meanderings by Talkiimg. The poet Windrum, in one of his works, wrote that there are as many languages in the world as there are stars in the sky. This is partially true. Whether you're in Vanguard, Colonies, or Archolos, you are bound to encounter people from all corners of the world, speaking different dialects. You'll find merchants from the southern islands, armed to the teeth, merchants from Middle Varant selling their wares to locals for half price, and grumpy Nordmardians spending their days in the taverns. Although each of them speaks the Western tongue, a set of common linguistic rules that facilitate communication, it is impossible not to notice some discrepancies. Vanguardian uses characteristic hard consonants. The inhabitants of Archolos, on the other hand, have trouble articulating the melodious names of newcomers from the southern Myrtana. Believers will say that Enos tangled people's tongues as a punishment for them bowing to Beliar. Scholars will, however, say that the diversity of dialects and accents in the world is rooted in the natural process of the development of different cultures. Tangled Tongues, Volume 2. Languages and dialects were, are, and will be artificial creations, created not as a divine intervention, but as one of the key elements of the process of formation of different cultures and different religions of the world. To better understand the issue, I will use examples. Native Vanguardians, but also newcomers who wish to be understood, often clearly articulate certain elements of speech, especially in the names of foreign origins. The southern name, Sahrad, is spoken by them literally. The people of Zandir Sol, on the other hand, read it as Sarad, with the consonant H omitted. The linguistic differences, however, are not only at the level of speech, but also the way words are accented. The inhabitants of the eastern archipelagos stress the first syllable when pronouncing their own names. The word Archolos, however, the stress on the word Ar might also have historical connotations, as the name of the island was once devoid of the prefix Arch. Language is a fluid thing, depending on where the people who speak it were born. Furthermore, it is also a kind of richness. We should keep the memory of our roots alive by nurturing accents and dialects before they can be found only in the pages of history. Okay, to be honest, that's kind of very interesting and potentially a little bit unbelievable that everyone in the world of every human in the world of Gothic speaks the same language. Like, I guess that's supposed to illustrate the point that they all come from the same sort of primordial stock of humanity. But it has been hundreds of years since they, or maybe even thousands, since they split into those various groups living in different places. So it isn't, I don't think it's unbelievable to imagine that they would actually develop separate languages and not just separate dialects of the same language. Because the only other language that is depicted in the world of Gothic is the language of the orcs. The orcs have their own language, which is markedly different from human language. Law and tradition describing changes in duel rules. Without tradition, our laws would be nothing. It is not just a set of prohibitions and orders invented by one and imposed on another. Who has enough wisdom in his head to decide about everything in the world? After all, they need to be regularly corrected and adjusted, because the world is changing every day. An example of such development are the laws based on the tradition that is the right to duel and the right to honorable weapons. In the olden times, any convicted person could claim to fight in a duel to prove his innocence. This meant that many skilled swordsmen would never be convicted and could do as they pleased. On the other hand, to send a noble or a guard to prison was also undignified. The right to honorable arms changed that. If a convict was known as respected, he could be allowed his own weapons while in prison. It indicated that they were not being stripped of their former merits, and that fellow citizens still had confidence in them. This law has been applied less and less, and now it's considered a personal protest by the judge about the trial's outcome. Okay, I guess it's something akin to letting, because at first I was like, what? That's patently ridiculous to leave someone their weapon in prison. But I think it's something akin to leaving an officer's, sidearm, like their melee weapon, like in the ages past, their saber or whatever, their rapier, their sword, while in captivity, as a sign of respect to them. Because obviously you count on them not using that because they are surrounded by armed guards anyway, and it would kill them if they tried, but you still leave them their weapon to show that you respect them and you respect their position. Fisherman from the South Islands. The book describes the story of a fisherman, Kintaru. Most local sailors know it by heart. One of the local anecdotes that has long brightened the face of weary sailors is the story of a fisherman from the Southern Islands. His name was Kintaru, supposedly in honor of his great-great-grandfather, a fearless sea dog who sailed all the waters. Unlike his ancestors, Kintaru has never ventured far out to the sea. He cast his nests in a nearby bay, waiting for some zander or perch to fall into them. Usually around noon, when the sun started to set, he would stretch out in the hammock on the boat and sip dark beer. He had always believed that with the help of this drink, he could not only have a better time, but also catch good fish. One hot day, he emptied his beer in one gulp and fell asleep. The wind grew stronger and the rough waves pushed the boat deeper into the sea. Kintaro awoke at the shore of an unknown island. Disoriented, he paced back and forth until he met a local who welcomed him into Archolos and led him to Sailor's Retreat. Stories of amazing fish awakened his thirst for adventure. He wanted to catch something big, and so the next time he boarded the local cutter. The story of an archer, Khelen, written by Wenzel, based on true events. The island of Khelen hosts the great shooting competition every year. The winner can ask the governor to grant one wish. Young Patrick has long wanted to become a traveler and explore unknown archipelagos. However, he never had enough gold, so he decided to try his hand at the competition. In the port he met Petra, a merchant from the Merchants Guild, who offered him a solid but small bow. Its advantage was the extraordinary accuracy, the arrows always silently hitting the most sensitive point or the very center of the shield. The merchant assured that she had a lot of experience, contacts and respect in the merchant world. Without hesitation, Patrick made a deal and handed over his last money. The competition was getting closer, and Petra was not coming back. He started to ask merchants about her, but none had ever heard of her. The woman became a mystery that kept Patrick awake at night. After a few weeks of waiting, someone dropped off a box marked Silent Death. It turns out inside was a piece of useless stick bound with a string. Okay, so it's a story about how Petra supposedly ripped someone off, but obviously that it is said to be based on true events, but as every movie that's supposedly set based on true events teaches us, that's usually bullshit. The Wisdom of General Subli I read. The Great Magician Mikthar. There have been many fire mages of extraordinary piety, great magical knowledge, or unparalleled prudence, but few can match their achievements with Mikthar, the prudent one. Unlike his brethren, he was able to maintain a perfect balance between firmness in spreading the faith and forbearance towards the unenlightened. He believed that mages should not frighten and intimidate, but teach and inspire. Hence he commanded great respect even among the water mages. He spent many years traveling the farthest reaches of the world, where he passed on not only his teachings and Enos, but also the basics of history and sciences. During one such adventure, he came into a possession of a staff by which he was recognized by many, the Star's Judgment. He took that name from a ballad. Unfortunately, the Lord was all too quick to take him in. While his head was still grey, he gave up spirit by saving a small village from a host of the foul spawn of Belial. His faith was so strong that as his body burned, cleansing the area of all impurity without harming any innocents. Uniter I have read. Rodrigo's Diary. Silver Court, this is about Silbach. I have read all of that. I think I read that parable about Nordic. The greedy king who found the silver mine. I have read that as well. Soap Journal I have read. Hunter's Diary I have read. Work of the Wise, a research book by a man called Tanneris. Just as I once came to this island with Master Periandes, I had to make another pilgrimage after his death. The seed of my doubt was planted deep in my heart, and after certain revelations on the swamps, it sprouted. Though I no longer can call myself an archmage for the sake of the monastery, I shall keep the truth of what I saw there to myself, but my journey was not solely due to a crisis of faith. After all, the current residents of Archolos were not its first, as evidenced by the remarkable structures in the southern marches. During many weeks I spent traveling, I proved that these ruins are similar to appearance to certain elements of the fortress in the northwest. The resemblance can be found, especially regarding the foundations. It could be true that the stronghold was built many years, if not centuries, before Wolfzak, but why, in the end, did the swamp folk abandon their plans to expand their structures? One can assume that the warrior-like people of Archolos simply forced the settlers back into the swamp and carried on the work in their own fashion. The fortress is truly a place like no other on the island, and I don't just mean the dizzying colonnades and vaults that form a unity with the cave complex. Inside the fortress, I encountered a peculiar area that inexplicably stimulates my senses. Whatever the purpose for which the original inhabitants of Archolos erected the foundations of the fortress, perhaps they felt the same as I felt as I strolled through the endless underground corridors. With the permission of the guards, I set up my study in one of the rooms. Now it resembles a library, but I hope that in time I will bring here my tools for further research. The Great Hall, together with the catacombs, proves the undoubted craftsmanship of the builders. If the water mages had arrived on the island earlier, I would assume that they have helped to erect this impressive work. The stone pedestals also seem intriguing. Although today their purpose remains unknown, it is possible that they once served as the focus of a great magical power. Perhaps my former brother, Ibeus, can shed more light on them. The Scribe's book. Have I read that? No, so it is the Scribe's book. Though many pages of this ages-old book are missing, the writing is remarkably clear. Entry 4. We have repelled another assault. Glory to Yarun, glory to Wolfzak. The brave hearts of our warriors are filled with joy and the will to fight. Their swords must be led by the ancestors indeed. Even I, a mere scribe, can feel their presence. Last night, the wolf howl proved its use once more, decimating the enemy ranks. Commander Vardhal said that our provisions shall suffice for half a year of a siege. It is more than enough for Yarund to help us. I can hear the drums again, they are coming. Woe to us, did the ancestors themselves mock us? The moment the king's soldiers fell back from the gate, the sky bled, splitting out ribbons of fire. The flames poured onto the walls, melting them and turning people to ash. How can fire undo stone? What foul spells have our enemy at hand? The flames already engulfed the courtyard and broke into the great hall. We are trying to put the fire out, but I see no hope. I can barely breathe anymore. So hot, it's so hot in here. The Secret of Power. A partially scorched book dealing with peculiar platforms, written by the mage Ibeus. Although I have traveled the length and breadth of the island, and it would seem no more surprises in it, I still find places that inspire me to do research. One of them is a stronghold in the west of the island called Vardhal. Indeed, a specific aura can be felt in the place. I am also certain that the people who once erected its foundation had some higher purpose, a purpose I'm still trying to understand. Though the guards from the tomb of their ruler even for a step, I managed to get permission from their commander to conduct further research. I also had the chance to catch a glimpse of the oval platforms Teneris mentioned. They resembled the platforms I saw on the island of Korinis and Laran, and all I had to do was touch the surface of the one here, and I felt powerful vortex of energy flowing through it. All indications are that the magic that has somehow been accumulated has a limited charge. The question now is, can this charge be re-injected into them? What were these strange platforms used for? Indeed, how little we still know about the secrets of the greatest gift of the gods. It seems the purpose of the platforms was to transport objects and people from one place to another. Archmage Periandus said that the magic of teleportation is one of the least stable. Bending time and space is a fascinating subject to which I will devote my following years. Although the platforms follow a predefined system, I wonder if connections can be separated in some way. Perhaps the ability to teleport is bound not to the artificially erected platforms, but also to the places where the power is being concentrated. One such place lies south of Vardhal, and the other is in the Chapel of Adanos in the Silver River Basin. I have come up with a theory that the places of power are located in places of significance to the people who have once inhabited them. These can both be locations of happy celebrations or those of great tragedies. While the High Council looks on my research with doubt, I have no intention of stopping what I have started. I have to create appropriate runes to assign the various places of power. Archmage Modares would know plenty about them. Unfortunately, the Lord had a different plan for him. Okay, so that's all of the books. And I have about 15 minutes left in the episode, so I'll follow Ingolf and see what his deal is before I end this one. Oh, actually I have enough learning points to learn the missing 3 points of 200 weapons. Okay. Oh, where's my weapon unsheathed?
Gdzieś wśród moich ksiąg powinno być dzieło o tytule Potęga równowagi. Od wielu lat jej nie czytałem i nie wiem, gdzie mogłem ją położyć, ale z pewnością znajdziemy w niej coś przydatnego. Ja jeszcze raz przyjrzę się lekturze opowiadającej o historii wyspy. Gdy dowiedziałem się o waszej wyprawie, z ciekawości zacząłem wertować te stare kroniki. Sugerują, że prawda o rozjemcy może być zupełnie inna, niż wszyscy przypuszczali.
Okay, let's read that book. Oh, I can't read it.
Mam twoją księgę.
Wspaniale, pokaż mi ją. Niesamowite, przez tyle lat nikt na to nie wpadł. Jak mogliśmy być tak ślepi?
To jak? Oświecisz mnie w końcu?
Wygląda na to, że rozjemca wcale nie jest mieczem. Jeden z tłumaczy pierwszej spisanej historii wyspy Archolos popełnił błąd. Oryginał tekstu mówi o tym, że władcy dawnego Archolos utrzymywali pokój poprzez rodowe ostrze i rozjemce, które dawały moc, by zgasić ducha walki w sercach najbardziej zagorzałych przeciwników oraz wprowadzać pomiędzy ludźmi prawdziwą sprawiedliwość i równowagę. Podczas któregoś przekładów zniknęło słowo „i”, a kolejne opracowania i powstające legendy tylko ugruntowały ten pogląd. W ten sposób rodowe ostrze i rozjemca dla przyszłych pokoleń stały się jednym i tym samym przedmiotem. Sam pomyśl, o ile lepiej brzmi historia, w której to miecz jest rozjemcą. Przynajmniej taka jest moja teoria. Zgadzałoby się to z historią, którą nam opowiedziałeś. Nic dziwnego, że miecz i waga były zaraz obok siebie. Dla władców twierdzy to były dwa równie ważne artefakty.
Yeah, I think this is really sensible because it would explain why why Ulryk of all people could wield the sword, because the sword is not really an artifact of Adonos protected by divine power. It is just the ancestral sword of Wolfsak's bloodline, so its security system is not geared towards how pure your heart is or whatever. It's geared towards whether you are of the bloodline of Wolfsak, which Ulryk, I guess, is. He has always claimed that he is, but I guess that proves that he indeed is.
Zgasić ducha walki może odnosić się do lodu wydobywającego się z ostrza.
Dokładnie o tym samym pomyślałem.
W jaki sposób waga miałaby wprowadzać sprawiedliwość?
Ta waga nie jest zwykłym urządzeniem. Na podstawie informacji z księgi, których dla mnie szukałeś, wnioskuję, że wbrew pozorom waga ta nie służy do sprawdzania, jak ciężkie są przedmioty. Magia, która w niej tkwi, pozwala ocenić i porównać prawdziwą wartość rzeczy. Z takim narzędziem każda transakcja może być w pełni sprawiedliwa. Pomyśl, ilu konfliktów można by w ten sposób uniknąć. Autor księgi nie podaje informacji o tym, jak stara jest waga, ale jego zdaniem artefakt ten pochodzi jeszcze z zamierzchłych czasów, gdy cały nasz świat zamieszkiwały zupełnie inne kultury. Wtrąca jeszcze coś o tym, że już wtedy wierzono w Adanosa. By ukarać nieposłuszeństwo swych wyznawców, zesłał wielką powódź, która sprawiła, że do dzisiaj zachowały się jedynie pojedyncze relikty ich dawnej świetności. Ta część brzmi już jednak jak fantazja. Nie zmienia to jednak faktu, iż w przedmiocie czuć aurę równowagi Adanosa.
Jesteś tego pewny, Ingolfie?
Tak jak już mówiłem, to jedynie moje teorie. Jednak wszystko wskazuje na to, że chociaż część z nich jest prawdziwa, ta niezwykła waga wymaga jednak dziesiątek lat skrupulatnych badań, żeby być w stanie powiedzieć o niej cokolwiek więcej, a co dopiero poznać tajniki jej działania. Jedno jest jednak pewne, pod żadnym pozorem nie możemy pozwolić, by wpadła w niepowołane ręce lub co gorsza, znowu niszczała przysypana gruzami. Marwinie, wiem, że dopiero co został ci odebrany rozjemca, ale muszę prosić cię, byś zostawił tę wagę z nami. Nie mam żadnej materialnej nagrody, która mogłaby ci zrekompensować jej wartość, lecz jestem pewny, że sam Adanos podziękuje ci za ten gest podczas następnej modlitwy.
Okay, whatever. Like, to be honest, I kind of call bullshit on the whole premise of this magical artifact, because there is no such thing as an objective value of things. Value is a fundamentally man-made concept. Things only have value insofar as we think that they do, and the value changes drastically based on our life situation. For example, a bottle of water ordinarily doesn't have that great of a value, but to a thirsty man, like to someone dying of thirst in the desert, a bottle of water is like nearly invaluable. Like I've actually I've actually had this realization myself. Obviously, I was never dying of thirst in the most literal sense, but when I was in the Sahara, the locals in Tunisia were selling water at like a really, really, really high markup, and ordinarily you would never buy that because obviously when you're like in your room in the hotel or whatever, you wouldn't think it's worth it. But out there in the desert, I would gladly pay like thrice the price of a bottle of water just because it was there in the moment where I needed it, so I kind of call bullshit, but whatever. You can take it.
No dobra, trzymaj.
Arcymistrzu, wybacz, że przeszkadzam, ale mam bardzo pilną wiadomość. Wieża sygnałowa płonie.
Co? Jak to? Macie jakąś informację, co się mogło wydarzyć?
Nie, arcymistrzu. Gdy tylko dostrzegliśmy światło i dym, natychmiast przybiegłem przekazać informację.
Musimy to sprawdzić.
Ależ Notgerze, Przeor wyraźnie nakazał...
Wiem, co nakazał. Nie zapominaj, że aktualnie to ja jestem zwierzchnikiem klasztoru. Przeor nakazał nam czekać na znak. Myślę, że dzisiaj dość ich już mieliśmy. Najpierw jego niedyspozycja, później odkrycie prawdy o rozjemcy, a teraz jeszcze sygnał z wieży. Kto wie, czy to nie sami orkowie spróbowali zbliżyć się do Silbach. Marwinie, ostatnio miałeś okazję wiele podróżować po wyspie, a ja nie opuszczałem murów zakonu od dobrych kilku lat. Udasz się tam ze mną?
Czyżbyście w końcu zamierzali interweniować w świat zewnętrzny?
Przyznaję to z pokorą. Ty i wielu młodych magów miało rację. Zbyt długo siedzieliśmy zamknięci w naszym bezpiecznym klasztorze. Pozwoliliśmy, by na wyspie szerzyła się nieprawość. Teraz jestem już pewny, że Adanos chce, byśmy na nowo przywrócili tutaj ład i porządek.
Czy to oznacza, że upewnicie się, że lichwiarza dosięgnie sprawiedliwość?
Masz moje słowo. Jeśli ten człowiek jest winny wszystkich przewinień, o które go oskarżacie, to zasłużona kara go nie ominie.
Notgerze, widzę, że nie odwiodę cię od tego pomysłu, lecz ufam, że czynisz to zgodnie z wolą samego Adanosa. Teraz to ty jesteś najwyższym wśród nas i nie śmiem wydawać ci poleceń, lecz proszę, pozwól, bym to ja udał się z Marwinem na wieżę sygnałową. To na tobie spoczywa odpowiedzialność za klasztor i przygotowanie magów w razie najgorszego. Nie możemy ryzykować, że coś ci się stanie. Mam nadzieję, że nie będziesz ich musiał użyć, ale przyjmij te eliksiry lecznicze. Jeśli potrzebujesz jeszcze przygotować swoje wyposażenie przed drogą, to na placu klasztoru znajdziesz potrzebne przyrządy, a nawet kilku gości, którzy pewnie chętnie z tobą pohandlują. Będę tu na ciebie czekał. Śpiesz się, nie mamy czasu do stracenia.
Okay, I maybe will do some trading, like if I can buy an elixir or whatever.
Nie myśl, że nie wiem o twojej małej wizycie w podziemiach. Masz szczęście, że nie zniknęło stamtąd nic cennego, bo sam Notger dobrałby ci się do skóry.
What? I stole every single book that was in there. What are you talking about?
Nie pilnujesz wejścia do podziemi?
W tym momencie drzwi pilnuje inny mag. To chyba oczywiste, że musimy się co jakiś czas zmieniać. Stanie w tych podziemiach może jest wspaniałym sposobem na medytację, ale każdy potrzebuje od czasu do czasu zażyć świeżego powietrza.
Mógłbym od ciebie dostać jakieś mikstury lecznicze?
Nie wyglądasz mi na chorego, ale niech ci będzie. Weź ten eliksir. Za następne będziesz musiał jednak zapłacić. Nasz klasztor potrzebuje środków, by móc pomagać tym bez grosza przy duszy.
Pohandlujmy.
Okay, maybe I would buy this if I can get enough money before the game ends. Let's see. Okay, I was not selling those swords with names, but it is clear to me now, because I assumed that they might be some kind of a quest item, but I've been carrying, for example, this dagger called the Knup's dagger for like 80 hours now, so it's clear to me it's just flavor. I don't think they are used for any quest, so I'm going to just sell them. That's a lot of gold. I will keep this because I got this for my accomplishments. And I will keep this because that's my reward for killing the beast. It's clear to me now that that, you know, to keep all those things in my inventory is pretty much a waste of money. I have trophies to sell.
Hej, ty!
But I guess Marcus is dead, so that's so much for selling my trophies to him.
Po prostu trzeba odczekać.
Kto ci to powiedział?
Which is better? I think this. Obviously, I don't have the synergy with the Wolf Sun's armor anymore,
Nie może być tak dalej.
but it's still a decent build. I wonder if there's an alchemy table anywhere. I don't think so. All of the doors seem to be closed. Yeah, I think I'm ready to go with Ingolf, but I will actually go next time because this episode has been long enough. Do you have an alchemy table? You do. I will go with Ingolf next time. For now, that's all for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.